All right, welcome everyone to this webinar of the BD School. Today, for this month, we're going to talk about 5 common sales objections, and I'm going to share some tips on how to handle them. Now, the agenda for today, first of all, who I am. Now, for those of you who know me, it's going to be a bit repetitive, but I see a lot of new faces, so I'm very happy to do a little introduction. I'm Lucia Piseddu. I'm the founder of the BD School. The BD School stands for the Business Development School, and it's the leading educational platform entirely dedicated to business development. I am Italian originally, as my name might suggest. However, I live in the Netherlands for 10 years now, and that's where the BD School is based as well. Now, the BD School, as mentioned, is the leading personalized learning platform entirely dedicated to business development, and we are on a mission, which is the one of creating the next generation of business development pros using the power of knowledge. Now, what does it mean for us, the new generation of BD pros? It means people like you, that really choose business development as their career because they understand it, they love it, and they really want to build a successful career in this job. Now, our mission is to support you in this career, in building a successful career, and we do it in a few different ways. Now, the first one is by producing a lot of highly specialized and practical content around business development, like this webinar, the monthly webinars that we host. But if you go on our YouTube channel, on our blog, on our social media accounts, you're going to find a lot of very practical content that you can use in your day-to-day job. The second way we help is with courses and training. So if you go on our website, you're going to find a variety of courses and training that you can take to improve your business development skills. And last, for those of you who prefer a more personalized approach, we also provide one-on-one coaching. So if you want, you can just go on thebdschool.com just to have a bit more context into who we are and to have a better idea of what you can expect from our webinars. Now, without further ado and going into today's topic, let's talk about the agenda for today. Now, first of all, we want to start with a little introduction on what are objections and what it is that we're really talking about. Then we're going to go into 5 common objections with some practical tips to handle them. And then I'm going to share a framework, an objection handling framework that you can also download as a template. We will find the link at the end of the session, so stay with us so you can get access to that. As mentioned before, the last 10 minutes will be dedicated to Q&As, so you can either write your questions in the chat in case you might forget them during the session. Otherwise, you can just unmute yourself at the end of the session and we will make sure to answer all of them. Now, let's get started with the first important question, which is, what is an objection? Now, for all of us working in business development or in sales, but at the end of the day, pretty much in any line of business, any function, we're always going to have to deal with some sort of objections at some point. And these objections can make us very stressed, right? Especially if we feel a lot of pressure to deliver results, maybe to generate revenue, to close deals, and so on. Because these objections, they typically come when we have finally a sales meeting with a potential customer or a partner, and we think everything is going great until at some point the other person says, yes, okay, but how about this and that, right? Or I'm not really convinced because this or that. Now, these objections typically leave us quite stressful, but my goal today is going to be to change a little bit the perspective on objections and eventually help you actually take advantage of them and really turn the objections into your advantage. Now, first, we need to understand what are objections. When we're talking about an objections, can be anything from a doubt and hesitation, a concern that the potential customer has before purchasing a product or service from you. Now, typically, especially if we're at the initial stages of our career, but to be fair, it doesn't really change even as we grow into our career, objections can be very stressful because they really put us under the spotlight, and they kind of create a little bit of frictions into the sales process. But if we really are objective and we really start to look at these objections in a more, let's say, rational way, we actually realize that objections are not that bad. Because actually it shows that there is an interest from the prospect, right? If there was no interest, your prospects would not be voicing their concerns. They will not be asking you follow-up questions. They will not be sharing their doubts with you, right? So on one end, it shows that the person is really invested enough, right? They really want to understand all the details about working with you. And this is even more important, it shows that there is some sort of trust that is already being built with this person. Just think about your personal relations, right? Without going too much into the business world. When you're talking to someone, maybe at the beginning you're a little bit skeptical, you don't want to share too much, right? But then as you start feeling comfortable with that person, you start opening up a little bit, right? You start showing some vulnerabilities, right? And even if they're not vulnerabilities, you feel comfortable enough to share your doubts with this person. So at the end of the day, objections, if you get stressed about that, try to change the perspective and really look them under a better light. Now, objections are not bad. They show interest and they show that there is initial trust from the prospect. How, as everybody here probably knows, one of the most important currency in business development is definitely trust. So once you have these initial signals of trust, you have to embrace them. You should not be scared about these objections, but you really should see them as a good signal that the person is interested in what you have to offer. So what we had to do is, instead of being scared of them and, panic when we have these objections, we have to take advantage of them and really make sure that we transform these objections into an opportunity for us to keep the conversation going with the other person and then eventually develop the relationship until the point that we actually gain the right to make our pitch and then eventually win the deal with this specific person. Now, what are some of the most common objections that we're going to tackle today? Now, typically, the objections, they're usually around a few things, right? There are budget objections. I think that's probably the most common and also the most convenient, let's say, from a customer prospect perspective, right? They just say, that's okay, I don't have the money, fine, right? They kind of think of closing the deal, of closing this conversation in this way. Then we have objections that are more related to trust, right? So, I don't know, it seems too good to be true, right? Or I'm not sure if this is the right fit for us, or I don't know, maybe I just don't trust you, right? As a person. That's okay, right? And now the last most common, let's say, typology of objection is related to the urgency or the timing, right? Maybe everything we're doing is great, we're really on point with our offer, but it's just not the right timing. Now, we're going to tackle some of them a little bit more in the specific. We're going to see what are some of these common objections, and then we're going to see what are some practical tips that we can immediately apply next time that we're in a call and we hear these objections. Also, because at the end of the day, for when it comes to handling objections, the most important thing is actually our own preparation. Now, the more prepared we are on what are the common objections that we hear all the time, the better we are prepared then to answer these objections, and not only to answer them when the customer or the prospects brings them up to you, but you can even anticipate them, right? Now, at the end, as mentioned, I will share a framework that you can use that is going to help you to do exactly this, anticipate objections. But let's not rush too much. Let's start with the objections first. Now, first objection, I'm not interested. Now, the I'm not interested, love it because I use it all the time, especially when I receive some cold calls. I'm like, I'm not interested, right? And I'm pretty sure that it happens to you as well. Now, the I'm not interested is a very convenient excuse, right? Sometimes you don't even have to read the email to listen to the person on the call. Even if you're in a demo, right? I just say, that's fine, I'm not interested. Now, the I'm not interested, again, it's a very convenient excuse, but usually it has some underlying issues, right, that we need to understand. That's why whenever we hear this objection, right, we're talking to someone and say, no, I'm not interested. These are some of the things we should be doing. Now, first thing is ask them. Just ask them, what is it that you don't find interesting? Okay, I understand, like, especially if it's a cold call, right? Yeah, you can say, I can imagine you're not interested. You don't know yet what it is that we can do, right? So, but what it is that you don't find interesting. Now, you can just ask them, and this is going to help you because of a few reasons. The first one is that most of the times people give up when they hear these objections, like, oh, I'm not interested. Oh, okay, bye. So from the moment you start asking questions, you kind of interrupt the pattern that they're used to, right? Whereas everybody would hang up, you would be like, okay, great. Why you're not interested? What it is that you don't find interesting, right? Now, this is going to help you break this pattern, and it's going to put the person on the spotlight. It's like, oh, wait a minute, this person is not going to give up that easily. Now, I say that people give up very easily because it is quite convenient from a BD perspective or a salesperson perspective, like, okay, fine, I'm just going to move on to the next opportunity. It happened to me just a month ago. I received a cold call. It was from, I think, an electricity company based here in the Netherlands. And I picked up, I just heard the name of the company. They were like, oh, I'm not interested. And they're like, okay, fine, bye. And they literally just hung up the phone, right? Now, they didn't ask me anything. And maybe if they would have asked me something, what it is that I don't find interesting, I would have gave away some insights that could have helped them to actually build the case as to why I should be interested in what they're doing. So first thing is ask them what they don't find interesting. To make it even more effective, you can use probing questions. So refrain from using, let's say, closed questions like yes or no questions, but use questions that really enable you to go a little bit deeper into the needs of this person, the reasons behind this objection, and really trying to understand if they really are not interested or they're just trying to get rid of you, right? Now, these probing questions, usually they're the questions that starts with the what, why, or how. So as you can see, they're questions that really help you to get this level of insights that you wouldn't get if you just ask a yes or no question, right? Now, in your preparation, when you build your objection handling playbook, try to really think about all the possible objections you get. If I'm not interested is one of them, then come up with a list of questions starting with what, why, or how that you could ask in case someone tells you I'm not interested. So probing questions, second tip. Third one, whenever you figure out what it is that they're not interested in, because that could be, right? Maybe you just led your conversation with a topic that is not necessarily urgent for the person. Maybe they never thought of it. Maybe they simply don't have that problem, right? Maybe they have another problem that you could solve, but it's not the one that you led with. Once you ask these questions, you should have enough elements to understand what it is that maybe could tickle their interest. If you manage to do that, if you manage to find out what are these needs, these interests, then you can continue the conversation focusing on these other features or benefits. For example, to me, it happens all the time when I'm doing sales calls for the training, especially if I'm talking to large organizations. I usually spend about 80% of the time asking questions. I do that because fundamentally, I don't know what are their problems, what are their needs at the very beginning of the conversation, right? I might have an idea, most likely I do because I researched the prospect, so I can more or less figure out what it is that they need in terms of business development training, but I don't know. However, when I ask these questions, then I actually have somewhat of guidelines and an idea on what I should be saying next, right? For example, if I'm talking to a VP sales that tells me, oh, you know, my team is, they're great, they're really great, they're really motivated and so on, but I think we're doing something wrong tactically. We use a lot of cold outreach, but we don't get responses, right? Now, at the BD school, we have more than 70 training modules, right? So I could be saying everything that comes to my mind about business development. But I figured out that the actual problem is really related to cold outreach, and probably they're not doing it well. So my next focus is not going to be on all the modules that we have and how cool we are, but I'm going to focus only on the module related to cold outreach. If I do that, then it's going to be more aligned to the problem of the person that they're trying to solve, more aligned with their needs, and I have more chances to move the conversation forward, which at the end of the day is the goal of any conversation that we have with our potential customers or partners. Now, last tip, if you're witty and if you like to use humor, go ahead and use humor to answer this objection. For example, if someone tells you, "Oh, I'm not interested," but they didn't even let you say anything, you can say something like, "Oh, well, if I were you, I would also not be interested. I don't even know me, but let me explain why I'm calling you," right? Now, usually when you say this, it doesn't always work, right? Because sometimes you find people that are, I don't know, maybe very busy, they're having a bad day, right? So you could still be rejected. But again, using humor helps you break the pattern of the conversation. So you basically disassess the person and it's like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, maybe I was too rushed, right? Okay, maybe this person is cool. Let's hear them out. Or I can appreciate the effort of using a little bit of humor. So to recap, if someone tells you, "I'm not interested," ask them directly, just be open, ask them what they don't find interesting. Ideally, use probing questions that enable you to gather more insights into their needs. Once you find out what are the real needs of the person, use them to pitch the next feature or USP or benefit that is more aligned with their need. And as a last instance, if you're comfortable with that, use some humor in your conversation, and they're going to appreciate that. Now, let's move on to the second objection. Now, this one, again, another very convenient objection, especially when you're doing a cold call or, even if you're sending out a cold email, if you're reaching out on LinkedIn, on Instagram, or anywhere else where reaching out to your audience. This, I think, it's probably the most common after "I'm not interested." It's like, "Oh, I don't have time right now." Okay, fine. It can happen, right? Especially if you're reaching out to, C-suite or people that are very busy, founders, or anyone at the end of the day, right? We're all busy. We all have objectives. We all have KPIs, and we all have things to do in our daily life, right? So it's really, regardless of the audience, this objection is probably going to come up. I don't have time. So how do we respond to this objection? Now, empathize and listen. This is the most important thing to do in this case. And really, to understand the importance of empathizing, I just want you to, put yourself in the shoes of someone that receives a cold call or a cold email at a moment in time that is not necessarily the best moment, right? Now, I'm pretty sure that none of you would like if the other person's like, "No, but wait a minute, it's just 10 minutes, and we do this, we do that, blah, 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 blah." You're not going to like that person. There is no way you're going to like someone that does not respect your time, right? It's absolutely a no-go. So instead, just empathize and say, "Oh, I'm sorry to catch you at a bad time. I'm really sorry. When is a better time to call you, right?" Or, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't want to disturb you. I'm going to try it another time." Don't insist, because when you insist, you're actually going to make enemies with your prospects, and that's definitely not something you want to do. Then, again, don't insist on moving forward, just cut it short, respect their time. Instead, ask them when is a better time, right? Again, don't let the conversation slip up, right? Because sometimes it can be maybe the person is just working from home and instead of working there, I don't know, maybe doing the laundry in that specific time, or maybe they're cooking, I don't know, it can be something else. Or maybe they're running to a meeting. It can be absolutely anything. But don't let it slip up, right? At the end of the day, you got the luck to actually find the person on the phone, or you got the luck of getting the person to reply to your email. So you need to seize the opportunity, and you need to seize it in order to book another call. So just say, "Oh, I'm sorry to catch you at a bad time. When is a better time to call you so that I don't disturb you again," right? Now, again, in all these cases, you might still be rejected at the end, right? But here we're talking about opportunities to move the conversation forward and giving yourself a little chance to actually figure out what are the needs and then eventually propose a solution to this potential client. And this is also very important, and it's really a sign of respect. Be very specific about the time that you need for this conversation, right? So if you know that you're going to need about 1 hour to discuss everything, just tell them, it's like, "Oh, look, is it okay if we block 1 hour of our calendar, because there is really a lot to talk about?" in short, don't be sneaky and say it's going to be just 10 minutes when you know perfectly well that it's not going to be 10 minutes, right? Now, in general, let's say as a rule of thumb, to have a very good sales conversation, a good call, right, that really gives you insights and that really puts you in a position of providing a solution to your potential customer, you need between 20 and 30 minutes. Less than that, you don't get enough insights, which means when you're going to provide the solution to the person is not going to be perfectly aligned with their needs. So you always need to count between 20 and 30 minutes. And ideally, these 20 minutes should be you asking a lot of questions, and then the last 10 minutes to actually pitch and then answer eventual objections and so on. So if you know that this call is going to last 30 minutes, be upfront and say, okay, great, when is a better time to call you? Okay, I'm going to pencil in 30 minutes. That's all I need. And after that, I will set you free, right? I always like to say, I set you free. It's a bit humorous, but sometimes it really feels like they are freeing themselves from you. So you can steal this little sentence. So again, to summarize the how to answer the I don't have time objection, first of all, empathize and listen to the other person. Don't insist on moving forward. Instead, ask when is a better time to call and be specific about the time that you need. Do not cheat on that. Now, other objection. Oh, great. That sounds great. You have an amazing solution, but we're covered already. We already use a competitor. So yeah, sorry, maybe in 1 year from now, right? The 1 year from now, it's another sentence that is always very often used, right, in these conversations. Now, how I use a competitor. I remember that every time when I was doing my first calls at the very beginning of my career, so when I was 19, so many years ago, I would always freak out when they would tell me this, right? Because it really seemed like, okay, I can't do anything about it. Now, if the person already uses a solution, I have no chance, right? Especially if I already know the solution, I know that maybe they're cheaper, maybe they're better, or any other, thing that would make me feel that our solution is worse than theirs. I would always feel defeated at the beginning, right? But this is the wrong attitude, right? Because yeah, if they use a competitor, it means that at least you got it right. They have a problem that you or a similar solution to yours can actually solve. So again, it's a good sign, right? So, okay, great. They have a need. Now, what do we say when someone says, oh, I already use a competitor? Now, first of all, ask them questions. So first of all, ask them questions about who is the competitor. Sometimes people are a bit sensitive about that, so they don't want to give you the answer. Personally, I always ask, and I always say, I don't want to be insensitive here or ask too many sensitive questions, but do you mind sharing who's the competitor you're using? If you're nice enough, people are going to tell you. Then again, it's not always the case, right? Sometimes people tell you, that's okay. I don't feel comfortable sharing. That's okay. But most of the times they don't really have anything to hide, right? So they're going to tell you who is this competitor. Now, knowing who's the competitor is already the first element to know how you should pitch your offer, right? So what are the features, the unique selling points, the benefits that you should put forward as you continue the conversation. But to go even more in depth, you should ask this prospect or this partner questions that really help you understand what type of relationship they have with this competitor. For example, you could ask, oh, okay, and for how long do you use this company? What made you decide to go with them, right? What were the specialties or the benefits that you really liked about this competitor? And you can also be very upfront, right? So especially if you realize that, this relationship is very tight, you can also be very upfront and say, look, I understand that there is no business to do between the two of us. However, since we're here, your feedback could be very helpful for me. So do you mind if I ask you some questions? So really start asking questions that really help you understand how close this person is from this competitor, understand the actual needs, so what really drew them to this competitor, and of course, potentially identify some areas in which you are better than this competitor, and you feel really strongly that you can actually add more value to this competitor, to this partner, compared to the competitor that they chose. So asking questions is always a secret. Then, super important, don't trash the competition. Don't do that. It's just not elegant, it's not nice. But besides not being nice, you're really gonna create this image in the eye of the client of someone that is complaining, that is a bit resentful, and someone that it's not very nice to do business with, right? Instead, you should praise the competition for what you know they do well, right? And you could say, oh yeah, of course, yes, I know this company, they're amazing. Actually, we have a lot of customers that used to work with them and they have really good works about them, right? Or you can even mention some specific features that you know they do better. For example, oh yeah, I know that their reporting is so great. However, I also heard that this other feature is not that great. What's your experience with it? Right? So you don't want to trash the competition. However, you still want to highlight the differences, and you need to do it in a subtle way, right? In a way that eventually helps also the potential customer to realize what are the differences between you and the competitor, and that maybe, creates this little voice in their head that says, wait a minute, maybe there is something better in the market. Let me see. Maybe it's not this company, but let me check. Let me continue the conversation, right? So whatever you do, don't trash the competition. Actually, recently, what I started doing when I do my sales calls, so if there are people coming to the training, that inquiring about the training, I try to be as honest as possible in the sense that I first try to understand the needs and so on. But then if I see that they have doubts or they say, I'm not sure, I would say, look, there is also this other company that is doing that. Go to check them out because maybe they're a better fit for you. Usually I do that when I understand that the needs of this customer, they're more aligned with what we can actually offer, right? So, but at least they have the option, right? So maybe I was wrong and maybe they choose a competitor and then at that point I shoot myself in the feet. That's how we say in Italian. But to say really that, maybe I went against my own benefit. But for me, it's also important that people have the right options, and when they take a decision, they take it because they're really convinced, right? This is also going to help you to actually build a stronger relationship with your clients and prevent that in the future a competitor is going to steal them from you. So whatever you do, don't trash the competition. Then if you find out that there are some potential complaints, they're talking about the competitor, say, yeah, actually, we're with them already for 10 years. We have a long-term partnership with them. So, that's, we don't see the need of changing, right? Then try to understand if there is something that they could do better, right? Or something that maybe is not aligned anymore with the new trends, for example, with what is needed for the market of today, and address these potential complaints, right? And say, oh, well, I see, I understand that the reporting of this X company is not that great. How are you handling that? How does it affect you, And again, you basically use this opportunity to do a little bit more of a needs analysis and really understand if there is an opportunity for you to actually do business with them. So if you find these potential pain points, address them. And obviously, share how you handle things better, right? Now, the best way you can do that is not by saying, oh, we're the best, we're the greatest. Look, this feature is trash on this on the competitor you're using. You really should not be using them. Come to us. No, you can say something like, actually, just last month, we onboarded 5 clients that were using this specific competitor, but they switched because this feature was not working properly. They were wasting a lot of time on manual tasks, or it was not fitting their needs anymore, or it was outdated, or any other reason, basically, that brought these customers to you. So yeah, we are really good at these things. So we invest a lot of our time into developing this technology, this service, this product. So we know that we are stronger on this because we have customers that came from this competitor, right? So you can share how you do things better, right? And you should do that, right? Especially if you think that you can add more value than your competitor. And the point of mentioning these customers, right, that switch from this competitor to you is to add social proof to your conversation. Now, keep in mind that when you're talking to someone, especially if it's completely cold contact, right? So someone that you never spoke to before, or maybe you did, but it was a very light relationship, so it's not a really tight relationship. Just, use social proof, because this is going to help them to feel more comfortable. They're not going to feel like the first ones to work with you, but they feel, oh, wait a minute, there is this company X, Y, Z, there is Amazon, Google, and Tesla. They're all working with them. Okay, maybe they're onto something, right? Okay, maybe they're worth listening to. So let's see what they're all about. Now, a quick recap. So again, if you have the objection, we already have a competitor, ask them questions to understand better the relationship. Don't rush the competition. If you understand that there is some sort of friction between the competitor and your potential customer, address them and share how you handle things better using social proof. So using the voice of your own customers. Now, fourth objection. Yeah, sure, sounds interesting, but look, send me more info by email. That's the worst. I dread this objection, because it's like, oh, come on, like, we're here. It's actually much faster if I ask you 2 questions. We're going to figure it out immediately if we're fit or not, right? But okay, send me more info. Fine. Now, to me, when I hear the send me more info, it's the kiss of death. I do not like to receive this objection. But yeah, so we cannot really control, right, the other person. So we just need to handle it and deal with it. So what can we do? First of all, say, sure, of course, I understand that you're busy, so I'm happy to send you some more information. Fine. You can do anything. Again, like, it's pointless to try to insist and keep someone on the phone or on a conversation if you're in person and so on. It doesn't work, right? So just acknowledge their request, but ask for what they want specifically, right? Because this is going to oblige them to give you a little bit of extra time. And this extra time is what can make the difference between you continuing this conversation or not. Because once you buy yourself this time, you're actually buying yourself the opportunity for more questions, more insights, more follow-up questions. And maybe you're lucky and the person starts to open up a little bit with you. So ask for something specific. Say, okay, great, I can send you some more information, but what specifically would you like to know? Is there something in the specific? For example, and then you can mention a few things, right? So the idea is just to catch the curiosity of the person and make sure that they keep talking to you. Then, absolutely, and this is super important, especially if they tell you, send me more info by email, you must schedule a follow-up call. You must schedule it. You need to ask them, okay, I'm going to send you this information by email. However, I will call you again. Can you call tomorrow at this time, right? And be super specific about the timing. Say, okay, tomorrow at 10 a.m. Does that work for you? If not, we're going to find another time, and I'm going to send you a calendar invite so we don't forget. This is really important because the semi-info by email, again, is super convenient. They're never going to respond to you ever again, right? It's a super easy way to get rid of you, basically. So you need to be very structured in that occasion. Make sure that you ask for specifics and you schedule a follow-up. And ideally, try to deliver value immediately. Now, again, the trick or the secret sauce is to ask questions that help you. Again, when you ask for the specifics, it also gives you a chance to understand what is important for this specific prospect, which means you have like some sort of hook or some sort of little piece of data that you can use to deliver value. And if they tell you, oh yeah, I don't know, let's say I'm reaching out to someone proposing a training, a business development training, right? And the person says, oh yeah, send me more info by emails. Like, oh, yeah, sure, I can send you a lot of things by email, but would you be interested in knowing more about the content of the training or the methodology of the training? Or do you want just some general information about the company, And then depending on what they tell me, let's imagine they tell me, oh, yeah, actually, I'm more curious about the methodology, right? Because we only want a live training. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's great. That's all what we do. Actually, I have this video that is much faster. I can share it with you. This is going to help you better understand our methodology. And there is also some extra tips that you can implement directly in your training strategy. Shall we talk tomorrow at 10 a.m. so that you can give me your feedback, right? So if you find like something that, you think is going to add value to the person, just share it by email, right? It can be a report, it can be a video, it can be an introduction to someone, it can be anything, right? Depending on the conversation that you had. So if the person tells you, send me more info, don't waste your time trying to change their mind. Just say, okay, sure. What do you want specifically? Can we meet X, Y, Z? And I'm also going to share this report, which I think you're going to find very interesting and that you can use immediately in your job. Now, last most common objection, I don't have money. We don't have budget, right? Again, this one, especially at the beginning of our careers, or, if it's just like we're a bit rusty with, doing this type of conversations, this type of calls, can be quite stressful, right? Because if someone tells you, oh yeah, we don't have the budget, you're like, yeah, okay, fine. So great. So what do we do now? If you don't have the budget, then I'm not going to waste my time with you, right? That could be something we think. But we need to keep in mind that when people tell you they don't have the budget, it is never about the money. It is actually about the value, or better, they did not understand the value that you can add to them, right? Because we have to keep in mind that money is just, let's say, a currency of trust, right? So I trust that you can improve my business. I trust that you can train my team. I trust that your software can help me save time. I trust that your marketing agency can help me generate more leads, right? It's all about the value. So if you're really good, if you did a great job in establishing the value of what you do, money is never an issue. Now, in our case, for example, we close our biggest deals in the shortest amount of time compared to very smaller deals and so on. Why? Because they had a very strong need for business development training. They did have the budget, but mostly they thought that we were the right partners for them. And I really invite you to think of similar scenarios, right? Think about some customers that really quickly decided to work with you. Why did they decide to work with you? Because they trusted you. They trusted that your solution was exactly what they needed to get the results they wanted, right? So it's never about the money, it's really about the value, which means that we were not good at establishing the value of what we do. Why we were not good? Probably because we didn't ask the right questions, right, during the conversation. So this is something that you need to be very aware of, because typically, again, unless, of course, you're really wrong in your targeting, I don't know, maybe you're targeting a company that is going bankrupt, then it can be about the money, about the budget. But typically, the budget issues, they always come towards the end of the conversation. That means it's our problem. We didn't do a good job. So how do we respond? Now that we understand that it's all about the value, we need to go back to the value and really understand what's important for them. And we need to highlight the return on investment that they're going to get, right? And say, okay, I understand that you might not have the budget now. However, what happens if you don't solve this problem, right? Especially if they have a big problem. Let's say you have a logistics software, they do everything manually, which means they're probably wasting a lot of time and money on these manual like reports and so on, which means probably half of the shipping gets lost. How much money are they wasting, right? And how much money could they save with your logistics software that maybe cost $500 a week, a month, right? So your goal is to go back to the value and say, okay, I understand you don't have the budget, but before you told me that you're wasting all this money on manual tasks. So wouldn't you like to save this money, right? Now, I can help you do that, because if you use our software, you're going to have X amount return on your investment within 6 months, 2 months, whatever that is, right? So always go back to the return on investment. Stay away from talking cost structure unless it's very, very needed. For example, in the training industry, whenever we do training for large corporations, like especially if we're talking to HR, learning and development teams and so on, typically, they do want to know absolutely how the pricing is structured, what are each line of an item, and so on. This typically doesn't happen if I'm talking directly to business development pros or with the commercial leaders. Why? Because typically in BD, we're more driven by value, right? So it's okay, this it's the right amount for the value I'm going to get, right? So if you can, unless it's strictly necessary, as in the case I mentioned before, don't talk the cost structure. This is going to confuse the person. It's going to make the conversation more complicated, very like detailed, and you do not need to get there, especially if you do not have these insights, right? So let's say if you just started working for a company and you don't know why that pricing is specifically that one, don't talk about that. You're going to make your life complicated. So again, talk about the price in relation to the value that you generate for the person. And if you can, but that is not always the case, right? Because I appreciate that if you're just starting working for a company, you're junior, you might not have much flexibility in terms of pricing, right? Maybe you cannot provide any discount. Maybe you cannot provide a payment plan, payment installment. So maybe that's not something you can do. However, if you can, get creative with the options, right? Just talk to the person openly and say, okay, look, let's see what we can do, right? So what is your budget? Ask them openly. It's like, okay, if this is out of your budget, what is your budget? Let's see if we can find a compromise, right? Again, your position is to help this customer solve a problem, and it's your job to find any possible solution to help this customer, given that, you know, it's in your realm of possibilities, right? It's not always the case. So budget objections, all about the value, focus on the return on investment and the value you generate for them. Stay away from talking the specifics of the cost structure, and if you can, get creative with options. Now, last thing, now that we are done with the different objections, I want to show you this very simple objection handling framework, which is more like, let's say, set of actions that we should take when we hear these objections. And then I will show you the framework that I will share with you at the end. Now, first thing in this framework is acknowledging, right? So whenever we're talking to someone and the person comes up with an objection, we should never ignore this objection. This is going to make the other person feel unheard. It's going to make you look less professional. While if you acknowledge the objections, like, I understand your point, but help me understand better, right? And you ask questions. So never ignore the objection. This is going to go against you. So make sure that you acknowledge the objection. You could say something like that, right? So for example, the customer tells you, look, your product sounds really interesting, but I'm concerned about the price. It seems a little bit higher than what I expected. Acknowledge it, say, I understand where you're coming from. I can understand that the pricing can be a bit of a problem. So can you tell me a little bit more of what price range you were expecting? And then we see if we can do something, right? So make sure that, again, you acknowledge that, because then when you acknowledge that, the person is going to feel like you're listening to them, and they're going to be more open to collaborate with you. Now, second step is clarify, because it is not said that, you know, when you hear the objection, you hear the actual problems, right, that are behind this objection, right? Sometimes you just hear, oh, I don't have money. Now, the I don't have money, what does that mean? I don't have money right now. I didn't put it in the budget for this year. However, I do need this. So maybe I can move the budget around. Does it mean that they don't have the authority to use this budget for this specific thing? Does it mean that it's a new problem that was not budgeted for, but again, maybe they can move money around and they can make it happen? You don't know. So your job as a second instance is to clarify, right? So again, the customer tells you, look, I'm not sure if I want to move forward because I'm not really sure if this product is going to integrate well with our software systems. Okay, great. Thanks a lot for bringing it up. It can be a problem indeed. It happened to us. So can you tell me more about the software that you're already using, right? Or you could even say, I can understand, did it happen already in the past? And what happened? How did it happen? What software was it? You know, so that I can better inform my what you're going to say next, right? And the solution that you're going to bring. So make sure that you ask questions to really understand the objection, and that you're really on point, so that you're not just taking a piece of information and drawing conclusions out of it. In doubt, it's always better to ask questions. Then next step is to obviously to respond to the objection, right? Okay, great. I'm interested in your product, but I'm not sure if it offers enough customization. Thank you for sharing your concern. And then you give your answer. Actually, we provide already customization. We do it in this way, in this way, in this way. Do you want to, explore this option further? Do you have other questions? Do you have other specifics that you need? And so on. So it's really about, being very specific and answering that objection in a very specific way. Again, the other person needs to feel heard, needs to feel that you're listening to them, and they need to feel that you're actually providing a solution that is in line with what they're looking for. This is going to help you build trust, and eventually it's going to help you close more deals. Last is to confirm. Now, even if you did everything well, like you acknowledged, you clarified, and then you responded to the objection, make sure that you always confirm that you got it right? So yeah, I'm concerned about the delivery timeline of a product. Can you guarantee that it's going to be delivered on time? Absolutely. We do this, we do that. We have a very well-established process in place. We have a person that is going to be like only dedicated to your account. Does it sound good? Or did it answer your question? Is it clear enough? So you need to make sure that the other person is on the same page as you, right? Because is it maybe, you think that you answered the objection, but maybe the person meant something else. And especially if you do business internationally, for example. Now, here we saw before, right, that we have people from many different places of the world, right? Now, for many of you, probably English is the first language. But for many of us, it's not. In my case, for example, my mother tongue is Italian. So whenever I'm talking in English, I think I have a decent level of English. But sometimes some words are not necessarily the same, right? Or maybe I don't mean the same as a native speaker, because maybe I'm thinking in Italian, right? So especially if you do business internationally, it is all the more important to really make sure that you got the objection right, that you answered in the right way, and that you really made the other person feel comfortable. Now, this is also the last tip when it comes to objection handling. And I want to leave you with this one specific resource, which is the objection handling playbook that you can find at this link. So you can copy this link or just go on this QR code. But I will also quickly share with you how this looks like. It's actually a very simple template. It's an editable template on Google Drive, so it's Google Docs. Now, here you're going to find some of the most common objections. Some we talked about already, some others not. So there are other ones. For example, the price is too high. We talked about it. But it can be, it's not the right timing, we already have a vendor, we need to consult others in the team, no budget, I'm not the decision maker, and so on. So you find a little bit more objections. And that is really just to give you insights and really help you to have some ideas on how to answer them. But the most important part of this playbook is actually this one. Now, as we said at the beginning, you need to be prepared to answer objections, right? So you need to have a sort of a list of common objections that people always make about your business. And you need to understand what is the objection, and then what is the trigger that typically brings the other person to this objection, right? So basically, what is it that you said that made the person come up with this objection? Could that be, oh, actually, yeah, but the price is only X amount. And the other person is like, oh, only X amount? This is not only, right? So this is a lot of money compared to the competition, compared to this or that. So the first step is really to understand what are the common objections and why, what is it that you say or do that makes the other person come up with this objection. So basically, you can use this space just to write down all these things, really to study your conversations. And once you figured out this, so it's really an exercise of self-awareness. Once you understand what it is that triggers these objections, you need to have a very simple way to answer this objection. So what you would do is here you would write on one end, what is the objection? For example, yeah, they always tell me that they don't have budget. They always tell me that they don't have time. Usually this happens when I say X, Y, Z. Perfect. Then you prepare your answer. Now, you're going to see that there are not so many answers here because at the BD School, we believe that it's really useless to give you a cookie cutter approach. It does not work. You need to do it specifically for your own company, specifically for your own case, which means you really need to put the effort into understanding what are the best ways to answer these objections, considering your specific audience, your specific product, your specific industry, your specific everything, right? Which means you need to experiment a lot. So whenever you're in a call, in a conversation with a potential customer or partner, test with different ways to tackle this objection until you find the magic formula. When you find the magic formula, then you write it down here as the answer to this objection. You can also write, for example, here, you can write an example of a conversation, right, that you had with the person. And you literally write down in your own words and in the words of your potential customer, what it is that they say, how they say it, and what is the best way to answer them. And then basically you just collect all of them. So you can copy this as many times as possible. Now, as you can see, again, this is a Google Doc. However, if you already have a playbook, if you already have a knowledge base, if you already have a place, or can even be slides anywhere where you keep track of these things, of your processes, you can just basically translate this into your processes. That is also why it's on a Google Doc, because then it's very easy to just copy paste it everywhere else and really adapt it to your own software and tools that you use. So if you want, I'll go back here to the slide. So if you want, you can just get access to this template at these links. And I will close here this part, the tips on how to handle the most common objections. So thank you very much, everyone. We're going to go now on the Q&A session. So let's get started. Before that, as I said before, if you're interested in our courses, if you want to improve your business development skills, just go on the bdschool.com/courses. You will find all our courses that are active at the moment. You can also find a lot of other content, so just go ahead and start working on your business development skills. Now, I'm going to unshare the screen and we can go ahead with the Q&A sessions.